Well, I've been involved in what you might call the alternative media for a good 5 or 6 years now. And that term can mean different things to different people. To me, it's basically just the process of using the internet, YouTube, blogging, things like that, to get your voice heard in a way that you wouldn't normally get it heard. And invariably, if you don't feel like your voice is being represented fairly in the mainstream, then your worldview and the things you believe in are probably different than what you would find on things like BBC News or the traditional media. So over the years, I've entertained all sorts of different things, conspiracy theories. I've engaged with people who have a wide variety of different views. Simple things like just thinking we need a new economic system, a new way of doing things, to people who think the world is run by satanic Freemasons and things like that. So when this Hampstead story first cropped up, I very quickly became aware of it because I'm very much interested in things that fall outside of the mainstream zeitgeist. I don't believe the claims. I can see why some people do. We're in a post-Jimmy Savile society right now. The system, our institutions have failed us, and we should have a healthy level of paranoia and distrust of the establishment. But that doesn't mean we just switch off our critical thinking skills and just assume that every heinous allegation after that is true. For as long as the Jimmy Savile stuff was covered up, a lot of it has come out now. It has been investigated. There's countless corroborative stories from lots of people. And the allegations are plausible given his access to vulnerable people and just the context with which these things have been alleged. With Hampstead, there's no evidence. No other victims have come forward. No eyewitnesses have come forward. And the children have retracted the stories in a very convincing manner. They said that Abraham Christie had violently forced them to make up the allegations. And this is evidenced by the bruising and the medical evidence. But as far as the original allegations, there's literally no reason to believe them. How does a satanic orgy take place in a regular primary school in the middle of the day with hundreds of people and no tangible sign is left behind? How does it happen in a public church that everyone can enter, in the middle of the day? Faced with such implausible stories, and the fact that the police investigation failed to corroborate any of the allegations, why would anyone believe it? There's nothing. And I think the people who believe the story, they believe it for emotional and psychological reasons, not because they have the evidence that it's true. And that's where certain sections of the alternative media are failing their readership and their viewers. I'm not just going to blindly believe something because it fits my prejudices or it goes with my worldview. It's quite simple. Evidence. Where is it? Yeah, I think it's very easy to see a story that provokes an emotional response, and then you click like, you share it, and it goes viral. Content producers manipulate that response every single day. It's the process of making things go viral. In my day job, I've seen the whole clickbait concept. You'll never guess what this man will do next, and it kind of provokes people to click on things and to share and to sort of, whether it's true or false, to spread the information. The truth is not really part of that process. And it's a psychological thing, it's a social thing, it's an emotional thing. 20 years ago, people would be sharing their crazy stories and the local rumours, down the pub over a pint with a handful of people. Today, they do it on Facebook. It's just that today, the mechanism for spreading false information, it's so much more efficient, and you can spread it to so many more people. In this case, in the Hampstead case, it wasn't really a problem with the source, because it was a YouTube video of the children. It was more of a problem with people not thinking critically about what they were watching. Just because there's a video doesn't mean that what's said on the video is true. And I think the problem with the internet is that it allows you to have your opinion, your belief massaged by other people that have the same opinion and the same belief. You can fall in this trap, and I've fallen in this trap before, of not really thinking critically or checking the sources because hundreds of other people already agree with you. It's a herd mentality. If you entertain the idea that there's a satanic cult, and then you find a forum on the internet where other people believe that there's a satanic cult, and then you friend each other on Facebook and you start sharing stories about the satanic cult, eventually that is going to become your reality. You end up being in a cult of people who believe there's a satanic cult. Sure, people should self-regulate. Alternative news sites should adhere to certain standards, but they're not going to. And I think forcing them to, through legislation or something like that, paints an even darker picture than the problem we're facing now. It's a slippery slope when you start regulating free speech and what people can write and stuff like that. I think perhaps on a personal level, on an individual basis, if somebody that's been accused of things that aren't true, maybe they should be more proactive in taking it, through a libel case or something. But on a mass scale of regulation, I don't think that's really the way to go. The better option is perhaps emphasizing critical thinking on an educational level, at school or just at a family or a societal level. Whether it's mainstream or alternative, if somebody has a solid grasp of reason, evidence, and logic, it doesn't matter if somebody shares a crazy satanic, cult story on Facebook, or if David Cameron wants to invade a country based on false pretenses. It doesn't matter because the individual will have the skills and can put the story through a critical lens and come to a reasonable conclusion. This doesn't make sense. There's no evidence. Why would I believe this? And if you as a citizen with a voice and the internet, engaging with alternative media, if you see something like Hampstead and you see it's getting out of control, use the tools available to you to counter it, which is kind of what I've tried to do. Nobody's perfect. I've got things wrong. The point is you try and concede when you've got something wrong, and you try and learn from your mistakes, and you try and become a more rational person. But I think the best way to tackle false information is to actively pick it apart, start a dialogue, present a more truthful analysis, and then the general public or whoever, they can decide for themselves. But if nobody does that, if nobody challenges false information, then more damage will be done in the future. I think Belinda does have a lot of influence over her followers, and sadly, some of those followers seem to be vulnerable people. I don't know whether she actively preys on that kind of person or they're drawn to her for whatever reason. But we do know that at least one prominent person who Belinda has been propping up with this story, who's been deeply involved in, and they've been standing side by side together, does have a history of mental illness. And if you go back through Belinda's track record of other cases that she's been involved with, the same thing crops up. People who have mental illness being exploited by Belinda. The Holly Greer case is a prime example of that. She also seems to have this uncanny ability to promote people who claim to be the Messiah. That's perhaps a different topic for a different day. But we can look at Hampstead and we can say a lot of bad things about the mother, Ella Draper. That she's evil and how could she concoct such a horrible story. But I think it's quite clear that she's an ill person. Okay, she's somebody that hasn't, got the help that she needs, whose delusions have been encouraged and enabled by people like Belinda and this other lady, Sabine McNeil. They've been intimately involved with this case since day one. And at times, they even operated as Ella's lay legal advisors. And these are people that have no legal training whatsoever. And it makes you wonder whether this story would have gone as far as it has if people like Belinda didn't latch onto it, didn't encourage the delusions from the mother, and didn't promote the story all over the internet to a wider audience. They do seem to be very influential. They were influential on Ella herself, but also in spreading the story far and wide. Now, whether Belinda herself is just deluded or if she has some other agenda, I don't know, but there's definitely a pattern of exploitation of vulnerable people there. And she also seems to have this endless bank account funding all of these dubious causes, gallivanting all over the place, having activists, stay at her house and things like that. Maybe that's because she takes a lot of donations, I don't know. But I think people shouldn't be fooled by this warm and polite exterior. I think she's a very smart woman, but I think she's a very dangerous woman. And she's played an important role here in ruining two children's lives and ruining the reputations of a lot of innocent people.